Ladies and gentlemen, I think we won't be able to sort out the technical problems very quick, so perhaps we should start now? Yeah? Okay. Perhaps they can sort it out in between, but there are too many people waiting, and that's not good. So let us start. I don't know if there will be the video, which was supposed to. And I remember COP14, where we had a meeting on the decade and ecosystem restoration, and where the room this event on Zoom for virtual participants. So it will be also recorded.
Of agri-food system, and the message was clear: the urgency and the willingness to act. Today is the International Day of Plant Health. for themselves, and FAO is working hard to make them up. Through our Action Against Desertification program, funded by the European Union and Turkey, communities, technology, and science are at the center of a model that has already restored over 60,000 hectares of degraded lands, benefiting over 1 million people in 10 Great Green Wall countries. FAO is scaling up implementation, focusing on small and medium-sized farms, strengthening value chains and local markets, and enhancing land restoration and sustainable ecosystem management. Governments should lead in restoring by providing an enabling environment, empowering local people, and supporting them with incentives. FAO, a founding member of the Restoration Initiative, funded by the Global Environment Facility, and leveraging the expertise of FAO, IUCN, and UNEP, has so far helped restore over 160,000 hectares using scalable models with wider uptake. Partnering with JEF under the Impact Program in drylands, we aim to restore over 3 million hectares of degraded lands. FAO also work with members and partners to enhance science, innovation, and local traditional knowledge by increasing technical capacity, sharing best practices, and helping monitor progress. And monitoring is important to see how we are evolving and what is the gap. The new framework for the United Nations Decade Framework on Ecosystem Restoration, monitoring, provide access to key data and tools through a geospatial portal linked to FAO hand-in-hand initiative. FAO and its partners are taking action, but we need to much more, and now. The United Nations Decade will only succeed if we match our ambition with action and keep the momentum with adequate investments, policies, and partnerships. Youth is special, critical to generation restoration. I hope this event inspires scalable, practicable, and sustainable actions to achieve land degradation neutrality targets by 2030. Let's use what we know. Let's act now and together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria Elena, for talking to us about ecosystem restoration and the potential of LDN in achieving food security and economic recovery, but also mentioning that it's important not to destroy so that we don't have to restore. But on the other hand, it's also important to restore, not to destroy more. So perhaps it's also an important issue. So thank you very much, Maria Elena, and I would like to call upon the second keynote speaker, Susan Gardner, who's the director of the Ecosystems Division of UNEP. It's my pleasure to give you the floor.
Well, thank you so much. And certainly, Maria Elena has already well laid out the case for the urgency and really emphasizing why business as usual is truly not an option. I'd like to emphasize her message, and particularly the message of hope, and the message about the UN decade as being a real inspiration for hope. It's so important right now at this moment, in particular against the backdrop of the triple planetary crisis, pandemics, and war, that we have this call to heal the planet. It's with an aim to prevent, to halt, and to reverse the degradation of nature and the ecosystems that we know support all of us. And I think there's a simple reason why there's so much tremendous hope and tremendous momentum. It's because we know that restoration works. We see so many examples. Maria Elena gave us concrete data on how investing in restoration actually has economic benefits. How restoration, just from an economic standpoint, is a cheaper way of dealing with climate change adaptation. And at the same time, it has a lot more co-benefits than any kind of technological approach that's been invented to date. But beyond that, we know that investing even just $4 per resident in growing trees in a city, for example, has tremendous impact on improving health. And that can be for millions of people just by filtering and cooling the air. And we're learning more and more about the impacts of nature on mental health, particularly for young people and adolescents. So we've seen real examples of restoration successes at all scales. And implementing the UN decade can continue to have more successes and continue to see global impacts that's very meaningful through our acceleration of #GenerationRestoration. So I think we can really celebrate the UN decade on ecosystem restoration as a connector and as a catalyst for really working across the 3 Rio Conventions, as we talked about today in the Rio Conventions Pavilion. We need to link the restoration agenda on actions of climate, biodiversity, land degradation, resource use, and ensure that we're linking also our intergovernmental scientific bodies. We can place nature at the heart of the socioeconomic decision-making by connecting markets and governance and looking and ensuring that we're reversing the shortcomings and really catalyzing greater investment in nature and more incentives for investing in nature. We can build partnerships that align investment with nature-positive choices, because investing in ecosystem-based approaches needs to at least triple by 2030. That's a lot of attention in a short amount of time. But about $10 trillion in global GDP could be lost by 2050 if ecosystem services continue to decline. So we need people to understand those numbers. We have to remember that, in fact, we don't actually need to fix everything with a human intervention. A lot of times, if you just leave nature alone, nature repairs and restores and bounces back, all on its own. Of course, we also should not forget ocean ecosystems. I have to mention oceans, dealing with dead zones, dealing with acidification, ensuring we're reversing coastal habitat loss, and that's a big part of the equation, as well as ending plastic pollution, including through the ambition of the decisions that are coming up in the upcoming intergovernmental negotiating committee for a legally binding agreement on pollution of plastics. So together with restoration, we can address the root causes of ecosystem degradation, meaning looking at unsustainable consumption and production. It means reforming economic and financial systems and encouraging all people and individuals to adjust their lifestyles wherever it's possible so they can become informed consumers who are empowered with information to make choices about what they buy, what they contribute to, and what is the impact of their consumption. So in conclusion, as the presidency of UNCCD at this COP has invited us to focus on land, life, and legacy theme, it's a rallying cry for us to collectively ensure that future generations benefit from land resources. And today, we're hearing such inspiring examples of real-world restoration successes and land management successes from Jeff-funded initiatives. We hope that this is going to inspire more reflection and further action. Ensuring the prosperity of future generations means bringing solutions that are already known, but bringing them to scale, and becoming the generation that restores and heals our planet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan, for your kind words, and also for showing us that ecosystem restoration works and that we have a big chance of involving also youth in this process. Thank you very much, and I would like to call now upon Andrea Mesa, UNCCD Deputy Executive Secretary to talk to us about the UN decade from the vision from the partnership or from the vision from the executive from the UNCCD. Sorry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and good afternoon to everybody. It's really hard to speak after hearing Maria Elena and Susan, and I will say that they have really framed a lot of the elements that I have here in my talking notes. So I will try to be brief, but I would like to reinforce some of these inspiring messages. First, and recently, as you know, we launched the GLO2, and we saw some data there that I think that reinforces some of the messages that we just heard. We're hearing that it is up to 40% of our land is degraded right now. So this is an affecting half of humanity and threatening half of the GDP. So we're seeing that we really need to accelerate and not underestimate this phase and this big existential threat. And it is through restoration that we can really work and start addressing a lot of these aspects. We are seeing, and we also found, that almost 200 practical ways are there to accelerate local, national, and regional land and ecosystem restoration. We have those practical solutions, and we will be hearing some of them. So it's about understanding that we have the solutions there, that we need to work together, mobilize resources in a scale, and accelerate those projects. There is so much knowledge there, but we know that we need to do it in a wisely manner. And it's about seeing specific projects. Maria Elena mentioned what we are seeing in the Great Green Wall, not only in terms of the environmental benefits, but also in terms of the economic benefits and what is generated in terms of jobs. So having these and really then seeing that we are seeing many commitments from countries, area-based commitments to restore. Almost 1 billion hectares have all the different countries have pledged and are there to restore by 2030. So this is giving us a great framework within this UN decade of restoration to really accelerate that action. And half of these commitments are under the LDN targets. So it's about how can we really align the different plans, how can we really accelerate what the countries need to consolidate this transformation, and to see that all these different agroforestry practices, grazing management, assisted natural regeneration stories can scale up. And I will say, and just to conclude some of my remarks, that it is possible, and I would share with you a story from Costa Rica, my country. Costa Rica was the country that had the highest deforestation rate in the region 20 years ago. And the country managed to stop that and even reverse that trend, and at the same time, it doubles its GDP. So this is also a story that demonstrates that at the end it's possible to have a nature positive, a restoration, a regenerative and restoration economy that can generate welfare and economic benefits. But we are seeing a lot of these other stories all around the world, and it's about seeing how we can work together to really scale up, and I will say, be that generation that can restore the planet, because this is our duty. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrea, for showing us also that the importance of the LDN targets for ecosystem restoration. Half is a lot, and also that it is possible, as in your country, Costa Rica, to change the situation drastically. So thank you very much. And last but not least, I would like to introduce our fourth keynote speaker, Mr. Ulrich Appel, who's Senior Environmental Specialist at the Global Environmental Facility. Ulrich, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good afternoon to everyone. First of all, I bring you greetings from our CEO, Carlos Manuel Rodriguez, who could not be here. And I really have the pleasure to be with all of you this afternoon. And I agree with the previous speakers that there has been never a more urgent time to restore and to heal ecosystems than now. So it is very timely that we have the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration now, led by FAO and by UNEP. And the GEF is a global partner of the UN Decade, and we really look forward to support the partnership in bringing to the ground all those ambitious pledges that we heard, which have been made all over the world. And we will see some of the experiences today. The GEF is supporting ecosystem restoration and landscape restoration since GEF 5 over the 3 past replenishments, and we will hear some of the project examples this afternoon. Also wanted to recognize UNCCD's role in raising the attention to restoration. We had a high-level segment on a roundtable on restoration, where also the global land outlook was introduced, which is a very useful tool for decision makers to bring this to the ground. And also, like Andrea mentioned, the LDN concept is very important in this regard, because it is the third pillar of avoid, reduce, restore land. Finally, I wanted to mention our CEO in his various talks here. He mentioned our successful GEF 8 replenishment. We have secured 5.25 billion for the next 4 years from our donors. And like the CEO mentioned, we will have even more integrated approaches in programming this money in the next 4 years. And one of those integrated approaches is ecosystem restoration. We will have a dedicated ecosystem restoration integrated program in GEF 8, which will be cross-cutting the 3 Rio Conventions and the 3 focal areas of land degradation, biodiversity, and climate change. So I really look forward to work with all of you together in GEF 8, beyond GEF 8, to support the UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration. And I really look forward also to the country's experiences on the ground today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ulrich. Thank you very much for pronouncing the interest of the GEF to support the Decade of Ecosystem Restoration, and also for making clear the importance of the linkage between the 3 conventions. I think that is very essential. It came out during several sessions since we started this COP. So with this now, I would like to thank again the keynote speakers, and would like to pass to our panel. There will be, now the next session will be in form of a panel, where we'll ask a couple of questions to the panelists. And I would like to ask the panelists to be very short, because we started a bit late, and by the time is limited. So following then this inspiring keynote speeches, we have then the panel to provide insight on the range of proven scalable solutions available across different ecosystems, geographies, and sectors. And I would like to start with our esteemed speaker from Niger, Colonel Abdou Macharou, who's the Director General of the Niger Great Green Wall Agency. I hope I pronounce his name properly. Colonel Macharou, the floor is yours.
Merci beaucoup, madame. Et je dois tout d'abord m'acquitter d'un agréable plaisir, celui de prononcer les excuses de madame la ministre en charge de l'environnement et de la lutte contre la désertification, qui devrait être actuellement avec vous dans ce panel. Elle est occupée quelque part, mais malheureusement elle ne peut pas être présente dans cet événement. Donc elle m'a chargé de vous passer le message. Donc j'ai compris de ce qu'elle m'avait déposé qu'il y a un certain nombre de questions qui nous est adressées. Dans la première, je vais vous laisser passer cette question, mais j'ai compris que c'est relatif par rapport aux efforts du Niger dans le cadre de la restauration de l'environnement de façon globale. Où est-ce que nous sommes en termes de résultats et quels sont les différents progrès accomplis et c'est quoi les perspectives. C'est bien ça, Madame la modératrice? Merci. Donc, en termes de vraiment résultats, comme vous le savez, je dois également le rappeler, le Niger, je dirais que c'est un pays au cœur de l'Afrique qui est secoué de tous côtés par les problèmes non seulement environnementaux, mais également des problèmes liés par rapport à la croissance démographique. Le taux de croissance est en moyenne de 3,7, c'est très important de par le monde. Alhamdulillah, on essaie de capitaliser. Depuis, en tout cas, je dirais, les efforts ont commencé, le gouvernement ont commencé, je dirais, le refaire, c'est vraiment la sécheresse de 1974. Comme vous savez, avec des résultats néfastes très importants en termes de ressources, surtout animales, mais également en termes de la dégradation de l'environnement. Le taux de notre dégradation de l'environnement, c'est environ 5 000 hectares de terre qui est déboisée chaque année. Face à tous ces problèmes-là, le gouvernement, les différents gouvernements successifs, en tout cas, ont essayé, il faut faire quelque chose. Et se faire quelque chose-là, ça consiste à d'abord élaborer une stratégie qui résume à la protection de l'environnement de façon globale. On essaie de voir l'ensemble des différentes méthodes. Et alhamdulillah, actuellement, nous sommes en train de vendre des résultats très importants. Je dois également le rappeler qu'en 2005, on parlait de 5 000 hectares de restauration que le Niger a eu à faire, qui sont très bien perceptibles au niveau même des informations satellitaires. Mais je vous apprends aujourd'hui, dans la salle mètre 13 à côté, les mêmes résultats sont en train d'être passés après 10 ans de mise en œuvre. Actuellement, on parle de 10 à 15 millions d'hectares de reverdissement qui ont eu lieu au Niger. Et c'est très important, en tout cas c'est ce que nous sommes en train dans le cadre de ces efforts-là. Et c'est un honneur pour nous et nous le continuons à assurer ce leadership dans tous les efforts que nous sommes en train de faire. Quoique c'est fait avec l'appui de beaucoup de partenaires, avec l'utilisation de beaucoup de méthodes de restauration, mais surtout un accent sur la régénération naturelle assistée. C'est très important de parler, c'est une méthode pratique, moins coûteuse, qui est à la disponibilité de tous les différents paysans au niveau terroir. Donc l'effort vraiment c'est par rapport à inculquer cette méthode de protection de l'environnement au niveau de l'ensemble des populations à tous les niveaux, notamment au niveau des villages. Des efforts ont été faits par rapport à comment ça doit être fait, quels sont les bénéfices issus de cette régénération naturelle. Et actuellement, les populations elles-mêmes sont organisées en marchés ruraux. Leur bois issu pour satisfaire leurs besoins quotidiens dans leur ménage est issu de ces produits de cette régénération naturelle. Ce qui fait que nous sommes en train d'assister à une baisse de la dégradation. On parle plus de 5 000 hectares, en tout cas les chiffres sont en train d'être versés. À la chambre 14 en face, tous ces résultats sont en train d'être discutés. Je crois que c'est important d'aller en avant. Je continue avec la deuxième question.
Oui, je voudrais poser la deuxième question. Yeah. First of all, I would like to thank you very much for sharing with us the experience and to congratulate for the achievements of restoration with, I would call it assisted recovery or assisted ecosystem restoration. And in that sense, I would like to ask, Niger has a successful JEF-funded initiative on restoring forest and agricultural lands through integrated management of its northern oasis ecosystem. To what extent have gender mainstreaming efforts contributed to this success? And what lessons on gender can be derived for future restoration efforts? I think the gender issue is also an important component. please be brief because we need to continue with the
Merci beaucoup, Madame la modératrice. Non, je dois être vraiment très succinct. Je sais que l'heure est très importante, mais vraiment cette question pratique là, je voulais vraiment que les gens de terrain répondent à ça avec des témoignages concrets. Je suis actuellement avec le directeur national de projet de gestion intégrée des oasis du Nord-Niger, mais également avec le maire d'Agadez pour vraiment livrer leur témoignage par rapport en vue de répondre à cette question. Merci beaucoup, Madame la Tête. Si vous ne voyez pas d'inconvénient, je pense que je vais passer la parole à ces deux cadres de terrain qui travaillent là-dessus. Merci.
Merci. Brièvement, s'il vous plaît.
Ok, merci beaucoup. Donc, je vais un peu corriger, c'est le premier vice-président du Conseil régional d'Agadez. Donc, comme on l'a dit tout à l'heure, notre pays, le Niger, en tout cas, a une forte politique dans le cadre, en tout cas, de l'émancipation et de l'épanouissement de la femme. Donc, c'est dans ce cadre, en tout cas, que notre région aussi a fait de ça une implication des femmes, qu'elle soit vraiment une priorité. Maintenant, dans le cadre effectivement, nous avons les projets de gestion intégrée des écosystèmes qui s'est aligné, donc dans cette logique, en tout cas, pour faire, en tout cas, des femmes, pour donner une activité aux femmes. Donc, les projets de gestion intégrée des écosystèmes oisien Nord-Niger a appuyé, donc, comme je le disais tantôt, il s'était aligné donc, dans cette logique, à accompagner 7 groupements féminins totalisant 180 femmes dans le cadre donc d'une formation sur la plantation du moringa. Et comme vous le savez, le moringa est une plante médicinale très importante, qui a vraiment des vertus médicinales, nutritionnelles. Et par conséquent, en tout cas, on donne des activités lucratives à ces femmes, comme en tout cas c'est une denrée vraiment prisée sur le marché. Donc c'est pour dire qu'en tout cas tout le monde n'est pas du tout, tout le monde est rentré dans cette logique, en tout cas de la préservation de notre système, de notre écosystème, et vraiment les actions, comme ils l'ont dit tout à l'heure, le temps effectivement est peu pour pouvoir vraiment les détailler. Mais tout le monde s'inscrit en tout cas dans cette logique de préservation de notre environnement, et les femmes sont vraiment en premier sur cette lutte-là. Je vous remercie.
Okay. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much for sharing this very important experience from Niger, and also for sharing the experience on how you involved women in this process. We would like now to pass on to the next panelist, which is coming from a completely different part of regional context. It is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Jigme Takpa, who is the Joint Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change of India. The first question would be, following India's hosting of the UNCCD COP14, including Prime Minister Narendra Modi's announcement of India's ambition to restore 26 million hectares of degraded land by 2030, and pursued emblematic initiatives such as the Andhra Pradesh Community Management Natural Farming, can you please tell us what has been done, or what has been the main features of your country's success in reversing desertification and achieving restoration at scale? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank for the opportunity for presenting and advocating the work that has been done by India, the COP14. The initiative was not only taken after the COP14, but all the initiative has been going on in the country since its independence. So during the COP14, there was several announcements which enhances the commitment done by India. India is a very unique country. Yesterday I also said it so. It's one of the most biologically, ethnically, and culturally very diverse country. It supports approximately 16% of the world population with human population and 11% of the livestock population, with only 2.5% of the geographical area. So the steady growth of human and livestock population and current policy of economic and trade liberalization are exerting very heavy pressure on Indian limited land resources, competing for use for forestry, pasture, human settlement and industry. So land degradation has been big challenge to the ongoing governmental investment to increase agriculture productivity, improve soil and water conservation and maintain forest cover. According to the Comprehensive Desert and Land Degradation Atlas of India, produced by the Space Application Center of Indian Space Research Organization, 97.8 million hectares of our land is measured as degraded and representing 29.32 of the total geographical area of the country. Another study done by the Energy Resource Institute in 2018, a study on economics of land degradation and desertification, tells that it amounts to almost 2.5% of our GDP. Moreover, with the land degradation and climate change are closely intertwined. Economics of Survey of India in 2017 and 18 indicates that the impact of climate change could reduce our agriculture income by 25%. In response to these challenges, Government of India has taken many initiatives and committed to international commitment to restore land, which includes bond challenge and land degradation neutrality target commitment to with a combined 26 million hectares of degraded land and deforested land to be restored by 2030. India has goal of national determined contribution to create an additional carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, that gigatons of carbon dioxide equivalent by 2030 through improved forestation and tree cover. India has also set a national target to help UN Sustainable Development Goal to be achieved by 2030. In this context, Government of India and Global Mechanism of UNCCD has partnered with India government and UNEP and other agencies to implement the initiative to address land degradation and prepared a detailed situation analysis on the status to achieve land degradation in the country. Through these several programs, India has already taken steps and action to stop and reverse land degradation and has committed to achieve LDN target by 2030 by setting voluntary LDN targets. India has provided global leadership by addressing challenge posed by land degradation and hosted the United Nations 14th Conference of Parties in New Delhi from 22 to 14th of September 2019. Country recognizes that LDN creates a target to manage land degradation through dual pronged approach. One is to avoid, reduce land degradation and combined with the measure to reverse the degraded land of the past decades. The main intervention is to restore the land productivity, ecosystem services of 26 million hectares, most of the degraded and vulnerable land, with the emphasis on the degraded agriculture, forest and wasteland by adopting a landscape level approach. This target has been announced at the highest level by Government of India, and ambitious is no net loss in the land for the whole territory of India. This means that the ongoing and anticipated land degradation losses will be counterbalanced with intervention to reverse land degradation. there are many issues, many projects, many programs of the government which I can deliberate on, which have been taken, and at present, out of the 26 million hectares, it has been a study was done by IUCN, which says 9.8 million hectares has been already achieved. So we are on the target, we are ahead of the target, and we are very sure of achieving our land degradation neutrality by 2030, and also restoring 26 million hectares and more by 2030. So these are the few initiatives that taken by India.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Thakkar. And congratulations for being ahead of the target in restoring land in India. Considering that we still have 5 panelists to go, I would really appreciate if you could briefly answer to the next question, which is India's initiating an interesting JEF-funded project that seeks to achieve land degradation neutrality at scale while mobilizing local farming communities to adopt sustainable production of marketable commodities such as coffee and spices, and enabling farm access to markets and finance. What are the main opportunities and challenges you see in promoting LDN at scale involving the millions of farmers in India? If you could please give us a reply in 2-3 minutes, that would be great.
Ma'am, actually the question asked is too broad, and I have to squeeze in everything in 2 minutes. Anyway, but what I could say that in India, when it got independence in 1947, we were producing only 50 million tons of food grain, and it was a food security was a big challenge, and we were importing food at that point of time. Today, I can announce in this August gathering, India is the world's largest producer of food grain, 300 million tons, and it is increasing year by year. And there was after the independence, Government of India announced a green revolution, under which the agriculture production was given main emphasis, using hybrid seed, irrigation, fertilizer, pesticide, all the things were done at that point, because of which the agriculture production skyrocket, and it is now among the top producer and exporter in the world. But this process had a drawback. One thing that India's 50% of the Indian agriculture is only irrigated, and 50% is rain-fed. Therefore, the rain-fed area has a lot of issues and problems. The irrigated area, the farmers, the holdings are very small. At the same time, overuse of fertilizer, overuse of irrigation, overuse of pesticide has completely poisoned many of our agricultural land. Therefore, now Government of India has come up with many programs and initiatives under which the, like as you said, zero budget natural farming, so that the amount of fertilizer and pesticide use could be optimized to the level it is really required. India has come up with a very innovative system called soil health card. Each 19 million soil health card has been issued to the farmers. So every farmer knows what is the health of his land, his farm, and all the nutrients it has, and what are the additional requirements, so as to optimize the use of fertilizer. So therefore, these are the two very innovative issue, and natural farming has been now announced during our budget. So therefore, there's a lot of emphasis on farming. Apart from that, there is a big issue, as you said. What are the challenge? There's a challenge is big. Farmers is a very big sensitive issue. Reducing subsidy or changing the pattern is very, very difficult. You must be aware of the 3 farm laws that was introduced for marketing and revolutionizing the marketing system for the farmers. There was such a big protest. The government has to withdraw the farm laws. So given to this thing, at the same time, but the government is going ahead with many other projects and programs for encouraging to produce the best agriculture produce suited to a geoclimatic condition and edaphic condition. Apart from that, India is a pioneer. Since 1980, India has a drought drought framework, and we have a drought management plan and practices in plan, and we have what called scheme under which anywhere there's a drought, it is being mitigated through various intervention from the government in terms of financial resources or the water resources that are required. So therefore, there are many initiatives that has been taken to help the farmers to adopt natural farming and farming in dry land areas. So these are the few initiatives, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Mr. Takpa. I know that there must be many more, but time is limited. I'm sorry, and thank you very much for enlightening us with your experiences. And now would like to change again and gain another perspective on land degradation neutrality and the role that the strong policy can play in sustainable land management. It is my pleasure to introduce Mrs. Nino Ciccovani, head of the Land Resource Protection Division of the Ministry of Environment in Georgia. And my first question would be, Georgia is pursuing an innovative approach to downscaling LDN target setting to the municipal scale. Could you share some of the policy successes and technological advancements in strengthening sustainable land management from Georgia's Greenlands JEF project?
Thank you very much. I would like to share with you information about one project which is related, you mentioned, by Global Environmental Facility, and this project we are implemented with UNEP. You know, Georgia is a small country, but unfortunately we also have land degradation problem, especially from wind erosion and unsustainable agriculture practice. So under this project, when we identified our national target, we started work on municipal level to achieve this target on municipal level. First time, we understand that all people of our country understand what mean LDN targets and how they should involve in the implementation, achievement process. Because under this project we work in 4 municipalities, and level of the municipalities we created the national, the local working groups, and all stakeholders which are related to the land was involved in this working group. They are monitored all activities under the project, and also was created transformative project on municipal level. As I mentioned, we have unsustainable agriculture practice used in municipal level, so we started to use a crop rotation system. It was introduced about 400 hectares in each municipality. Also, as I mentioned, we have a wind erosion problem, and traditionally in Georgia was windbreaks, but during the 19th it was cut, and population was used by heating, and we should renovate these windbreaks. And for municipality, we starting developed these windbreaks. And for rehabilitation of degraded land, we first time used no-till plant technologies, which we try with FAO support and FAO helping. And I think this information was shared and informed other region of our country, and if we will have a future support from GF, we can scaling up these technologies for all our country.
Thank you so much for this experience from Georgia. Ms. Ciccovani, we heard earlier from Niger that Niger is mainstreaming gender in its restoration initiatives. To gain a perspective from a different part of the world, can you please tell us about how Georgia is mainstreaming gender to achieve greater results in LDN projects?
I will inform you under this project what was done. As I mentioned, was created national municipal working groups. In this working group was a lot of women involved in this process, and we on the municipal level created and developed the national gender action program. So for under this project, we also developed 2 nurseries special for windbreaks, and the farmers of the owners are women of this nursery.
Thank you very much. This is very interesting, how to involve also local women in these projects. And thank you very much for this experience. So after hearing the experience from Georgia, I would like to move closer to where we sit right now, meaning Abidjan. And it's my pleasure to introduce Colonel Major Mr. Mamadou Sangare, who's the Director General de la Société de Développement des Forêts in Côte d'Ivoire. Mr. Colonel Sangare, would you please share with us the experience of the cocoa sector, which makes a sizable contribution to the GDP of Côte d'Ivoire and employs millions of people. But if it isn't sustainable managed, the sector can also contribute to deforestation. To strike a balance, how are restoration projects supporting job creation and youth engagement in the cocoa sector in Côte d'Ivoire? Mr. Sangare, the floor is yours. I don't see you. Where is it? What? Oh, sorry.
Bonsoir, messieurs, bonsoir,
sorry.
mesdames.
Let me excuse, it's not Mr. Sangare, Mr. Leong is here. Sorry, he is replacing Mr. Sangare. Sorry.
Oui. Donc, je suis le colonel Léon Siagoué. Je représente le directeur général de l'assaut des forts empêchés. Madame la facilitatrice, je voudrais, au nom donc, du directeur général de l'assaut des forts, vous présenter donc la situation de la Côte d'Ivoire en matière donc de restauration et de conservation du couvert forestier et donc des zones dégradées. Ce que je voudrais dire, c'est que l'assaut des forts a été créée en 1966 et à l'origine, elle avait pour mission de réaliser des plantations forestières. Et depuis 1993, et donc depuis 1993, l'assaut des forts gère 234 forêts classées, donc l'ensemble des forêts classées ivoiriennes. Et avant les crises successives qu'on a connues de 1999 jusqu'en 2002, le taux de dégradation des forêts était inférieur à 25%. Mais depuis lors, nous avons un taux de dégradation des forêts qui avoisine les 50%. Et donc, il y a urgence. Et la Côte d'Ivoire s'est donc attelée à développer des stratégies pour pouvoir donc inverser la tendance. Et au titre de ces stratégies, il y a des reboisements artificiels que nous réalisons et il y a la régénération naturelle qui résulte donc de la protection des forêts. Et il y a donc l'aménagement global. Et aujourd'hui, nous avons réalisé près de 220 000 hectares de reboisement, dont 60 000 hectares de reboisement agroforestier. Et en plus de ça, nous avons 2 centres de bouturage. Et dans ces centres, nous avons donc domestiqué des clones qui permettent donc d'avoir des hauts rendements. Et en plus de ça, nous avons 2 centres de conservation de semences. Et nous avons 5 magasins de stockage de semences. Et nous avons 14 vergers à graines et nous avons 317 hectares de parcelles semencières. Et donc, sur tout le territoire national, nous avons un réseau de peuplement naturel. Et donc, dans ces peuplements naturels et dans ces vergers et dans ces parcelles semencières, nous récoltons donc des graines que nous entreposons et cela nous permet de pouvoir assurer les besoins en matière de reboisement national et ça nous permet de satisfaire les besoins de l'extérieur. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Léon. Thank you. Thank you very much, and I think it's very interesting how you're integrating agroforestry and producing the cocoa. And the second question would be how we have heard about the ecosystem restoration delivers many benefits, in part through integrated approaches to environmental challenges. So how is therefore where you working, taking an integrated approach to tackle land degradation and other crises like biodiversity loss and climate change?
Ce que je peux dire en matière de restauration et de conservation des zones dégradées, l'assaut d'efforts s'appuie sur des groupements villageois et sur des groupements coopératifs, qui sont donc des communautés locales. Et l'assaut d'efforts signe des contrats de travaux avec donc ces communautés, ce qui leur permet d'augmenter leurs revenus. Et ce qui est intéressant, c'est que l'assaut d'efforts met l'accent sur les femmes d'abord en matière de production de plants et sur les jeunes. Et donc ces groupements coopératifs sont formés pour pouvoir donc réaliser les travaux forestiers, notamment la production de plants, notamment les travaux forestiers tels que la préparation du terrain, les opérations de planting et les opérations d'entretien. Et donc, ces communautés, en plus d'elles, ceux qui ont des parcelles agroforestières à l'intérieur desquelles on a introduit des arbres forestiers, le microclimat que ces arbres forestiers créent leur permet d'augmenter la rentabilité de leur production. Et on a donc bénéficié aussi, en termes de négociations que nous sommes en train de conduire en ce moment avec la FAO dans le cadre du projet SCOLU, il est donc question de pouvoir réhabiliter 5000 hectares de zones dégradées et de pouvoir assurer la formation de 200 femmes et de jeunes. Et donc, ces actions que nous sommes en train de conduire, et même au niveau de la Banque mondiale, nous sommes en train de négocier un programme qui porte donc sur près de 300 000 hectares de reboisement industriel et d'agroforesterie. Et ce qui est intéressant, c'est que ces reboisements sont répartis sur l'ensemble du territoire. En fonction des zones phytogéographiques, on a des espèces qui ont déjà été identifiées. Notamment, on met l'accent sur les espèces à usage multiple pour pouvoir donc permettre aux populations de pouvoir donc accepter l'agroforesterie. Parce qu'il est évident qu'en fonction des expériences qu'on a eues depuis 1966, les 60 000 hectares de plantations agroforestières qu'on a eu à réaliser, en fonction de la sociologie des communautés, le problème de la densité se présente. Parce qu'à l'ouest de la Côte d'Ivoire, on a réalisé des reboisements agroforestiers de plus de 400 tiges, de près de 400 plants à l'hectare. Mais au niveau de l'ouest de la Côte d'Ivoire, on a réalisé avec ces mêmes densités, mais par endroits, les populations ont détruit les reboisements. Et donc, il est question qu'on puisse véritablement nous accorder sur une densité qui puisse être acceptée de tous. Et je pense qu'en termes de perspective, il est important pour nous de pouvoir justement renforcer la communication avec ces communautés pour qu'on puisse s'accorder sur une densité acceptée de tous. Et il est question aussi de mettre en place un mécanisme de partage des bénéfices. Puisqu'il y a des arbres qui vont être introduits dans leur plantation, il faudrait qu'on puisse mettre en place une clé de répartition pour que chacune des parties soit satisfaite. Et l'autre aspect qui reste, c'est de pouvoir mettre en place un mécanisme pour pouvoir suivre les parcelles, surtout agroforestières, qui vont être mises en place. Parce que, comme je l'ai dit, près de 50% des forêts sont dégradées. Et donc, c'est un vaste projet d'agroforesterie qui va être mis en place. Donc, il faut mettre en place un mécanisme fiable pour pouvoir suivre l'évolution de toutes ces parcelles agroforestières qui vont être mises en place. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Léo. I think this is a very important example to show how important it is to involve the communities in the solutions and also to involve them in the monitoring. I think this is a very interesting experience. And now I'm going to jump again to another part of the world, and I would like, it's my pleasure to introduce Calvin James, who is Executive Director of Partnership Initiative on Sustainable Land Management of CLIPSIL, who joins us from the Caribbean. Mr. James, the question is, small islands, developing states face a unique and urgent set of environmental challenges that require a significant amount of financing to overcome. Can you tell us about what's worked and hasn't worked for you in terms of unlocking finance from a SITS and CARICOM perspective? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, moderator, and good afternoon to everyone. It's my pleasure to be here and to participate on this panel. I think the short answer is ensuring that our priorities are linked to national and regional priorities. And so just let me take 30 seconds or so to elaborate. In the case of the Partnership Initiative on Sustainable Land Management for Caribbean Small Island States, which I lead, we benefited from a decision of the Forum of Ministers of Environment for Latin America and the Caribbean in particular Decision 4 of 2003, which called for the establishment of a Caribbean SIDS program. The PISLM was one of the initiatives that was crafted within that Caribbean SIDS program. Building on that decision from the Forum of Ministers for LAC, and in launching the Caribbean SIDS program and the creation of PISLM, the Ministers of Environment for the Caribbean community not only endorsed PISLM and its mandate to assist Caribbean SIDS in follow-up to the issues that would be addressed under the UNCCD and land resources elements in the Barbados Program of Action on Sustainable Development for SIDS and other SIDS instruments, but also expanded that mandate to include issues relating to rural development, poverty alleviation, and other rural sector issues in Caribbean SIDS. So it is based on a mandate from the Caribbean community that we were successful in attracting the resources necessary for dealing with the issues surrounding land management and land restoration. I think that example, that practice can be seen as one that can be replicated in situations such as ours. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you very much, Calvin. I think that's a very good example of how to have political will to have this kind of things done and to have a mandate for having a project like this. The second question, Calvin, would be how are you using the JEF seed funds to unlock larger scale finance to achieve regional LDN goals in the Caribbean? Financing is always an issue, so it would be interesting to hear your experience.
Okay, thank you again, Chair. Uh, let me start by saying that SIDS see ecosystem restoration and maintenance as a necessity and not an esoteric environment soundbite. And so to this end, the Caribbean SIDS, using the just completed decisions from the Ministers of Environment for Latin America and the Caribbean, together with the PISLM, have crafted a post-COVID environment and sustainable recovery strategy for the Caribbean. And this will be a multi-donor initiative which seeks to encourage, facilitate, and promote sustainable land-based activities, resilient livelihood options, and opportunities, and sustainable infrastructure to support green recovery and future resilience. Now, this initiative has several pillars, and I'll just mention 3 of the 6 pillars that would, fit well in this discussion. Pillar 1 has to do with sustainable land management, and under this pillar, we are crafting the Caribbean Land Degradation Neutrality Transformative Project, which is going to be built on an already existing project that incorporates 8 member states from the Caribbean SIDS, which used their Jeff Star allocations to finance a project we call Caribbean Small Island Development States, and I'll use the acronym for the project because it's very long. It's called Soil Care, and this is phase 1. So building on phase 1, we hope to attract resources from, for example, the Green Climate Fund, and work with partners to develop this transformative project. One other pillar which is important for us in the Caribbean is pillar 4, which deals with indigenous peoples. And so taking into account Principle 22 of the Rio Principles on Environment and Development, we propose to develop an indigenous peoples project that looks at knowledge management, traditional practices, and land governance. So that will be built on projects that were done in Dominica, which was funded by Jeff, and in collaboration with the UNEP. Coming out from that, we propose then to approach other funding agencies to scale up those activities, not only nationally, but regionally.
Okay, thank you very much, Kevin. I think that is a very good example how you can join forces and get to the next step together based on a joint effort. So to close our panel, it is my pleasure to bring in the private sector perspective with Mr. Gauthier Quérou, who is the head of the Land Degradation Neutrality Fund at Mirova. Mr. Gauthier could not join us in person in Abidjan, but he has kindly offered to share his insights from a private sector perspective virtually. I'm not 100% sure if we will succeed with this. But my first question would be, what emerging lessons does the LDN Fund have to share on promoting a deeper involvement of the private sector in LDN initiatives? If we're lucky, we might get a response right now. And while we wait, I think we can give a big, big round of applause to all the panelists up to now for sharing the insights and experiences. Thank you very much. Here we go. We see him, we don't hear him.
Social benefits of ecosystem restoration. My name is Gauthier Quérou. I'm the director. Thank you very much for the invitation to participate to this panel on the environmental, economic, and social benefits ecosystem restoration. My name is Gauthier Quéreux. I'm the director of the Land Degradation Neutrality Fund, initiated by the UNCCD and independently managed by Mirova, a private fund management company headquartered in Paris. So regarding the lessons learned on promoting involvement from the private sector in contributing to land degradation neutrality, I would say that based on our experience with the Alien Fund, we could see that the private sector can play a key role, especially through two types of agents, of market players. First are the entrepreneurs. We see a growing number of talented entrepreneurs that develop projects that are meaningful, that can generate environmental, social, and economic benefits with the use of productive landscape by developing sustainable production of food and fiber, ranging from coffee, cocoa, wood, tea, local value chains and fruits, so many different types of products that can be combined with processing units to add further value, with carbon credits or the payment for ecosystem services. And by working also with local communities, taking care of local environment, water, etc., these entrepreneurs can really become successful and make commercially viable projects. So they are key change agents to make ecosystem restoration a reality. And second are the private investors. We see also a growing number of impact investors, but also mainstream investors such as insurance companies, pension funds that are long-term investors who are looking for meaningful impact investments. And actually, because of their net zero commitment, of their commitment to a nature positive world, they can allocate more capital to investment strategies related to land restoration. And as fund manager, like Mirova, we can make the connection between the entrepreneurs on the one hand and the investors on the other, and all together can help the private sector really contribute to land degradation neutrality.
Thank you. And perhaps we just stop the video for a minute to ask the second question, which is how is the Alien Fund working to circumvent structural challenges related to unlock private finance at scale? And how do you see the role of governments in these efforts? So we go for the second part, please.
So, yeah, regarding the unlocking of further private capital for ecosystem restoration, the Land Degradation Neutrality Fund has applied, so-called blended finance techniques to attract more private capital. Basically, the fund has three blended finance components. The main one is blending within the fund public and philanthropic capital with more commercial capital from private investors. And actually with public money from governments, we have the support from French Development Agency, from the European Investment Bank, from the Luxembourg, Canada, from the UK. Altogether, they have been taking more risk and have de-risked partially the capital from private investors, that is coming from pension funds, insurance companies, or the private funds that are protected partially by the public money. And so it means that it is encouraging the private sector to come in. This is one feature. The other is the also secondary unlocking effect, where the funding that the LDN Fund allocates to projects is also itself expected to be catalytic and to generate co-investment at project level, especially from local commercial banks or other private investors. We will have a demonstration effect and we'll onboard other investors to mobilize further private finance. And finally, the third component is the technical assistance facility that has been set up alongside the fund and that is managed by IDH in the Netherlands. That is a donor-funded vehicle that provides technical support to project developers to make them investment ready, to make them more robust so that the fund can then finance the project. And this, together with the de-risking tranche of the fund, is a way to make the investments acceptable to mainstream private investors. And going forward with a real track record of concrete projects and hopefully of many success stories, public capital will not be needed anymore for the next funds we will create, and going forward, more and more private capital alone will come in. Of course, we need to ensure strong safeguards, ensuring that environmental and social integrity is preserved. And this is also where the public sectors play an important role to set the standards for investment in ecosystem restoration. And there are great initiatives from the UNEP, from IUCN, from IFC, from the VGGT, and so on, to set good standards. But standards and public money can definitely ensure that private capital can flow to ecosystem restoration for positive results. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for sharing these experiences and the way forward for financing ecosystem restoration through the fund. Thank you very much for joining us from far away. Yes, and unfortunately we're a bit after late in time, but the actions that we're taking or don't, that we take or don't take now in this decade will have the biggest impacts on youth and on our next generations, as it was already mentioned also by our keynote speakers in the beginning. I would like to invite two youth representatives, Mrs. Isha Mitra and Mr. Apollinaire Savadogo from the UN Decade Youth Task Force, to offer us some closing reflections that we can all take with us throughout COP15 and beyond. I would like to invite Isha, please, if she could give us a closing reflection.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Isha, I'm from India, and I'm the global focal point of the Youth Caucus of the UNCCD. So here we have heard different countries' perspective, the global perspective, and the framework, the data, and how the implementation will be working. But as a youth, I would like to say we are the important element of the generation, because there are almost 1.8 million young people, and either we will be the catalyst or the analyst. So from my personal experience, I would like to say that I have seen my fellows, my friends who are not involved in agriculture or the land-based source of income, where we can talk about the green jobs. So as a part of India where almost more than 60% of people are dependent on agriculture, a large community like local community, indigenous people are dependent on the forest or land resources. So if they are turning back from the land-based job and turning to the white-collar job, it is not something we expect. So here in COP15, we are talking about land, life, and legacy. And I think legacy is something what we had and what we are going to have in future. So to connect the dots, it's important that the young people will be sustained. And I understand that overall benefits what we have here from the panelists and the experts, it's really impressing in the context of the environment, economic, and social benefits. So as a youth, I would like to remember the system and the process that we have discussed here will not be only restricted to the 2030 UN ecosystem restoration project, but it should go beyond so that we can take out this legacy of the life and land to our future generation, and we can sustain for a more long time. So that is what I would like to say on behalf of the youth, and from a country like where we are based on the agriculture and land resources. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Isha. I think this is very important what you said. It is not only the 10 years, it has to go much beyond. Thank you very much. And I don't know, there's some noise. Apollinaire, if you would have some words.
D'accord. Merci au Programme des Nations Unies pour l'environnement et merci également à l'Organisation des Nations Unies pour l'agriculture et l'alimentation de nous avoir donc offert ce cadre d'échange pour que nous puissions discuter sur les thèmes portant sur la restauration des écosystèmes et l'impact de ces restaurations-là donc sur la vie des êtres humains. Il faut dire que au passage donc de différents panélistes, nous avons pu noter donc de la part donc de FAO qui a intervenu en première position donc en faveur donc de la restauration des écosystèmes en disant que c'est une nécessité à tous donc de s'engager donc pour la restauration des écosystèmes et en nous donnant le chiffre donc de 2021 qui donne donc 193 millions donc de personnes vulnérables du fait donc de la dégradation des sols et de la nécessité donc de la FAO et de PNUE à restaurer donc les terres et leur engagement donc à restaurer 60 000 hectares donc au niveau donc du projet de Grande Muraille Verte qui va donc être aussi une tribune donc pour offrir de l'emploi également aux jeunes. Également, nous remercions Madame Suzanne donc pour son intervention au niveau du programme des Nations Unies pour l'environnement qui a montré les actions visibles donc de retombées positives des actions posées et qui a posé donc le problème de mettre en place des actions et pour pouvoir avoir des résultats donc escomptés avec donc les partenariats pour une meilleure utilisation donc des ressources et une atteinte des résultats donc d'ici 2030. Il y a eu la communication de Andrea également qui donne donc qui donne la nécessité d'agir rapidement parce qu'il y a plus de 200 solutions donc en faveur de la restauration donc des terres. Donc pour ce qui est donc du Burkina Faso, nous menons des actions au niveau de la coordination nationale des jeunes pour l'environnement et le climat. Nous faisons des sensibilisations pour l'adoption des comportements écologiques, des comportements verts en faveur donc, du climat et de l'environnement en général. Je vous remercie. Merci.
Thank you very much, Apollinaire, for your words. We're a bit short of time, but I think it's very impolite if we just leave and don't give some time at least for 2 or 3 questions. So if you could be very brief with your questions, I would like, before I pass on for the closing remarks, to take 2 or 3 questions. No questions? I was not able to follow if there were any online questions, but I think that we have no questions from the floor. Oh, sorry. Yes, please. If you can introduce yourself.
Je suis Mieza Antoine de l'assaut de Fort, Côte d'Ivoire. Je voudrais remercier tous les intervenants pour leur représentation. Alors, ma question s'adresse au panéliste qui nous vient de l'Inde. Dans son intervention, il disait que effectivement, l'Inde avait pris des engagements fermes et de par les actions entreprises, ils sont aujourd'hui en avance sur ces engagements-là. Et dans le même temps, il nous a fait savoir également que les populations qui doivent contribuer à ces efforts sont bien souvent réticents au changement. Alors, je voudrais savoir quel est le déclic ou alors les artifices qui ont été utilisés pour pouvoir vaincre cet obstacle-là, pour ainsi donc arriver à être en avance sur le programme établi sur l'engagement pris. Je vous remercie.
Okay, perhaps, I'm not sure, it seems that the translation was not working properly, but if I understood the question well, the question was that it seems there was quite a bit of resistance in order to do the change, and he would like to know what has been done in India in order to convince or to get people to move forwards in those changes which you proposed. Did I get it right? No? Oh.
Thank you very much. I think if I got him properly, what he wanted to know was how India managed to achieve the result in advance of the schedule that they had planned. Yes.
In India, actually, land is a fragmented. Land has a fragmented mandate. So it is we have a federal system, what is central government and the state government. So land as such is a state government subject. But other policy and programs are done at the center level also. There are so many ministries who is doing projects and programs. So therefore, there are many schemes and projects and programs which directly relates to land. One thing. Second thing is that there are about 34 programs in India which directly relates to the land degradation. It was not. It started just within this decade. It was from the beginning. There were so many projects and programs because it is a agrarian economy, and therefore the agriculture work has been going on since long. If I give you the status of forest, the state of Indian forest report, which came out very recently, it states that the forest cover in India is 809,537, which has increased from the earlier by 1,440 square kilometer. That is about 0.22 square kilometer percent increase in the forest cover. I can give a what called report of NASA. You Google it on NASA, which says that this decade is much greener than before because of two countries. One is China and other is India. Because of two countries in the world is much greener. That is a NASA report. Apart from that, there are so many schemes and programs on watershed programs. We have dedicated ministry looking after the water resources. We have a dedicated ministry looking after the land resources. They do a lot of work on the ground in terms of land restoration, plantation, watershed projects, programs, and this is a continuous program and process which has been going on. So we have in India 20-point program. One is called 20-point program. Like we have SDG program, India in 1980s and 90s, we have 20-point program like SDG 15. In SDG, we have 17 SDG goals. India had long back, in 2 decades back, we have 20-point program. Under 20-point program, all the projects and program for the restoration of land, the plantation is collected from all the states, all the ministries, and that is collected and put on the portal of the Prime Minister. That is called Prayas portal. On Prayas portal, you can see that 9.8 million hectares has already been restored since 2011. So that is a very, very transparent system. Apart from that, we have a very comprehensive reporting through geospatial report. One is through the Indian Space Organization, and other is Indian Forest Survey. Both the report comes, and it is very transparently, it can be easily seen. So therefore, the restoration work is going on. You can well imagine, can a country survive on a small piece of land, 2.5% of the 2.4% of the land, with 18-19% of the population of the world, has tremendous pressure on the land. Despite all this fact, India is among the 8 mega biodiversity country in the world. You talk about biodiversity, we have all the species in the world. No country can have this kind of a diversity. We have lion, we have tiger, we have elephant, rhino, every system. Even I am from an area from the mountains of the Himalaya. We have small area of species where we could have the snow leopard. Here in this August gathering, I guarantee to give you a granted sighting of snow leopard in wild in Ladakh. So that much of with that, we have the highest population of tigers. We have the highest population of elephant, Asiatic elephant, Asiatic lion. Despite the fact that there's so much of pressure on land, but by people by nature, by nature. We have, and this, our laws and legacies are there which protect land, which protect what called forest, and forest by Forest Survey of India has shown that there's an increase in forest. So apart from that, we also go for agroforestry, a very innovative way of giving livelihood through farm forestry that is very, very successful, and joint forest management with giving the community equal right in working on forest. So these are so many projects are there. I can list out, there are some other missions which I didn't say because there was no time what called constraint. We have like promoting site-specific integrated composite farm system. You know, every area has a potential for different farming. So we have a site-specific integrated composite farming system. We have soil conservation measure where we use the different kind of technologies like deep irrigation, sprinkle irrigation, all these technologies are there. And we, I said, soil health card is a weird new technique. Like human health card, we have soil health card. 19,000 system soil health card has been distributed to all the farmers so that they can only produce, use the only optimum fertilizers and chemicals required for the same. And there's a emphasis on natural farming and use of bio inputs, and we have some we have mission to integrated horticulture, mission for integrated development of horticulture, and apart from that we have a national mission for agriculture extension technologies. So therefore, though it's a developing country, still we are trying to manage the degraded land. Initially we went for a expansion, you know, of the area to produce more. Now that we have come to a limit, now we are trying to increase the productivity of the land so that productivity could increase, at the same time it could, you know, what could cope up with the Indian GDP or the growth. So those are the initiatives that has been taken.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Sorry,
you so
we
much.
need to cut you, and we don't want to be impolite, and I think you could continue for an hour. Thanks a lot. And I think perhaps you can bilaterally give him some more explanation of it. I think it's impressive because it shows a long-term commitment to the cause and really big programs which are committed in land restoration. So it's a big example, and yeah, I wish we had more time for sharing more examples. Thank you very much. And as we're coming to the end of our 2 hours, I would kindly invite or offer the floor to Mr. Johan Robinson, who's portfolio manager in the Biodiversity and Land Degradation Unit of UNEP, to offer an update and the next steps for the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. Thank you very much, Johan, please.
Thank you so much, Vera, and good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, I want to thank all the keynote speakers and the panelists for your time and sharing experiences. I want to thank everyone that has participated today, the in-person, you in the room, as well as those online. I want to thank the organizers, FAO, UNEP, for this great collaboration in bringing this together. We hope the wealth of experiences and approaches from which we learned in this event has inspired reflection that can lead to further action. I hope that we can find the means to catalyze these and other JEF investments such as the Restoration Initiative and replicate these success stories. Enough has been said today, so I just wish to take a moment to connect our ongoing initiatives and reflections here in Abidjan with our latest action under the decade. Côte d'Ivoire and the UNCCD have invited us to hold ourselves accountable to the legacy for future generations through the management of our land resources. This is a motto that speaks directly to the core of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration's mandate. The latest global land outlook found that 40% of the Earth's land is now degraded. This is bad news, especially for the more than 3 billion people that are suffering because of this degradation. But the good news is, as shown here today, there are many governments committed to the restoration of nature and action. Our future legacy depends on how successful we are in bringing the solutions we know to scale and innovating to overcome these barriers. To this end, learning from successful experiences will be crucial. It is under this spirit that the UN decade has called for the World Restoration Flagships. The UN has asked governments and stakeholders across the globe to tell us where do we restore and where are we being most successful. These are the efforts we need to learn from. The response was overwhelming. More than 76 nominations from the most promising areas under restoration right now endorsed by governments. From the peaks of the mountains to the depths of the sea. We will announce the first 10 official World Restoration Flagship at an international event in the fourth quarter of this year. Please stay tuned and please keep supporting #GenerationRestoration. Thank you, everyone.
So with this, thank you very much, Jan, and I think we continue our collaboration, and thanks again to all the panelists and keynote speakers. I wish you a good afternoon. Bye-bye. Thanks. And a special thanks to Alexander, who got white hair today by trying to sort out all the technical problems. A big clap to him, and to all who went behind him.